You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Make sure you're strapped in and ready to go, and you've got your hands and legs and arms, feet, head, all inside of the the chair, the cabin. You know the drill. You've flown before. Welcome to the show, guys. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to refer the show to your family, friends, relatives. Tell them to join the Chris Voss Show. Subscribe to it. Remember, we're the family that loves you but doesn't judge you. The best kind of family there is. For those of you, maybe the only family that will accept you at this point. I'm just kidding. You're not that bad off. Don't be depressed. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We love you. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. Hit the bell notification button. Goodreads.com for Chris Voss. See everything we're reading and reviewing over there. All our groups, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to that LinkedIn newsletter. That thing's killing it over there. And also our big 131,000 LinkedIn group. Today we have an amazing author on the show and a topical story for what's going on in the war in Ukraine right now. For those who might be seeing this 10 years ago, or 10 years ago, 10 years from now, we have videos you can see from 10 years ago too. So there's, front and back. Her new book that comes out April 5th, 2022 is Learning America. One woman's fight for educational justice for refugee children. Luma Mufleh is in the show with us today. She is the founder of the Fugees family. I believe did I get that right too?
The Fugees family.
Fugees family. Yeah. There you go.
Fugees. Yeah.
There you go. With schools now in Georgia and Ohio and an expanding footprint, bringing educational equity to refugee settlement communities across America. Her TED Talk is pretty amazing. I was just watching it on educational justice for refugee families was viewed more than 1.7 million times. Welcome to the show, Luma. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you for coming, and congratulations on the new book. These are always a lot of work and then a lot of fun when you finally get it published, huh?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of work. I never imagined I would write one, and I did it during the pandemic. So.
There you go. The pandemic sure helped. That's when I wrote my first book, too, was over the pandemic. So give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs and learn more about
FugeesFamily.org for our organization, at Luma_Mufleh on Twitter, and Coach.Luma on Facebook, and Luma_Mufleh on Instagram.
There you go. So FUGEES.com?
FUGESFamily.org.
Oh, okay. Family.org. Okay. I was just reading the name here off the bio. So tell us what motivated you want to write this book and give us a little bit of origin, if you would.
Yeah, I think it's the book I wish I had when I started this work. I wanted a book that would tell me how messy this work is, not something that glamorizes it. It was authentic and real about how hard to work with kids and how hard it is to adjust to life in America. For me, it was personal as well. I came to the United States when I was 18 and was granted political asylum at age 22. So I was born and raised in the Middle East. But it's a story of the organization I founded, Schools for Refugees, but it's through storytelling and weave some of my backstory into it as well to give people the reasons why.
And what brought you to this country? What country did you come from? What was the origin story there of your experience?
My experience. So I think it goes way back to my grandmother and mother. They are Syrian and they fled Syria during the first Assad regime back in the 60s. Another group was trying to overthrow the government. My grandmother's maternal instincts kicked in and said, we need to go. It's not safe. So she packed up her 5 children. She was pregnant with her 6th. And fled to neighboring Jordan. My grandfather refused to go. He's like, it's just another coup attempt. It's going to blow over. But this time it was different. They seized his factory and then arrested his brothers and they disappeared. Never seen them since. And so then he came and they started from scratch. My mom was 16 when she left. And then fast forward, I was sent to college in the United States. I'm gay. In Jordan, you can get the death penalty for being gay. So I applied for asylum. I actually had my asylum hearing 4 days after graduation. So, yeah.
congratulations for making it here. It's sad that people have to leave their home country because, I mean, that's a place where that's your home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it still that way?
Depending on who wants to enforce the law, like you don't know, like on the books, that is it, right? And then when in countries where there aren't democracies or rights, that's what happens. It's like, okay, today I'm going to take everybody in, and so it's still that, even though on the surface Jordan can appear to be modern, it's not.
We think we live in a world of human rights and, everybody's equal. And sometimes you get spoiled when you live here in America, especially Americans that were born and raised here. We just kind of think like, well, everybody has the same sort of thing going on. We do. And they don't. And it's unfortunate. So you come to America, and where does this lead into the foundation that you start with in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled after college trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was disowned by my family, so when I got asylum, I lost everything, my Jordanian citizenship, my family. And so I had to start from scratch and, jumped around from job to job. I eventually ended up in Atlanta. And then one day, as I was driving to pick up groceries from an authentic Middle Eastern store, I missed my turn back home, and I had to U-turn into this apartment complex, and I felt I was transported into a different part of the world. There was a mosque, a Buddhist temple on that street, and then when I U-turned into that apartment complex, there were a group of kids playing soccer with a raggedy soccer ball and rock set-up stones. That group of boys, they were from Afghanistan, Liberia, and Sudan. I'd coached club soccer for a long time. That's the universal language. They reminded me of home. And so I grabbed the soccer ball out of my trunk. They saw it. They wanted the ball. I wanted to play. We haggled. I ended up playing, and they got the ball, and that's how it all started. Yeah.
So where does this journey lead from there? It all comes down to a U-turn. It's interesting the paths we end up in life, just sometimes by accident.
Yeah, first it was that group of kids, and I got to know them. We formed a soccer team, and then their siblings wanted to join, so we ended up forming more soccer teams. And I'm a coach that really looks at the whole player. It's like, yeah, we had great athletes, but, it was really important for me that they were doing well in school. So they had turned in their report cards, and they didn't pass, they didn't play. And several times after practice, kids would ask with help from their homework. So we'd hang out at the park, do homework. And there's this one situation, that really stands out for me. One kid, he's quiet, doesn't cause a lot of trouble, verbally fluent in English. I was telling me, he's like, Coach, I have a headache. Can you read to me? And so I sat next to him, read to him, filled out the worksheet. Second day, he did the same thing. By the third day, I was like, there's something going on. So I said, no, Lewis, I have a headache. And he's like, no, I have a headache. And it's like, I'm more stubborn. And so waited him out. And then he eventually looked up at me and said, Coach, I can't read.
Wow.
And that broke me. My parents sent me to British and American schools growing up. And so I believed every school in America was like the State Department-run high school I went to in Amman, Jordan. And that was not the case. I didn't understand how a kid who'd been in public school for 3 years could not read. Yeah. And I said, if this was my kid, what would I do?
And did you find a lot of kids that were immigrant refugees that were having that issue too?
The vast majority were. The way we do it right now is a kid comes into the country, we place them in the age-appropriate class. So if you're 12 or 13, we're going to put you in 7th or 8th grade. You might get 1 or 2 hours of support a day of English language learning, but the rest you're supposed to function with your peers.
Wow.
And it doesn't make sense. Like, if you don't know the alphabet and you haven't been in school, like, how do you, it's so, like, illogical. And so many of my players were in that position. And so it's like, what's the point of soccer if they're just going to play games and then what, right?
Yeah. You've got to do something to build a life here and be able to, around the thing. If you want to, maximize your opportunities, you don't have to learn the language. I mean, I know there's a lot of people in California and I think New York and maybe other places that never learn the language. There's little barrios you can go in California. I've met people who are incredible restaurateurs and stuff, and they've never really learned much English, but they're really good at the food and what they do, and no one cares. But no, it helps open more opportunities. And the funny thing about America is I know a lot of people who are born here still don't know how to read right properly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just a problem for refugee kids, but I think we highlight it a lot more, right?
Definitely so. So what did you do? What actions did you take, and what pathway did you go with that?
I ended up starting a school for 6 of my players, hired a teacher, got a church basement donated. We're like, all right, how quickly can we get them to learn so they're at grade level, and then mainstream them back in? After the first 6 months, more kids were asking to be in it, and it just continued to grow. And we ended up opening another school in Ohio 4 years ago, three and a half years ago.
Awesome. So you build this academy, and you're helping people. And I would imagine, because a lot of these folks are refugees, they bond together because of their experience. You know, there's a lot of things that people that were born and raised in America probably don't understand from that experience, what it's like, the trauma, things of that nature. And I imagine it gives a bit of solace and help, or a community, if you will, to help people that have gone through kind of the same experience and can help carry each other or help each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing more powerful to heal trauma than being around others who've been through it, right? So you're not alone. I mean, we have kids from warring factions. We have kids from every corner of the world. But for them to say, oh, wait, it's not just me, right?
Yeah, we had Dave Navarro from one of the several different bands on last week or two, and we talked about trauma. And, yeah, that whole concept of you're not alone. There's a whole lot of other people who are suffering and stuff, and that's really important. Let's talk about, as the Academy grew, what are the things did you do in building a mission, student population, et cetera, et cetera? How did you get it to grow and be successful?
I mean, I think it was adapting as quickly as possible to the community needs. You know, we start off as a soccer team, so that's still very core in our school design. Every kid in the school plays soccer. Every kid's part of a team. We have a lot of music and arts integration, celebrate everything in the building. So literally every other week there's a party celebrating something, whether it's Holi or Eid or Christmas, something's being celebrated and kids are being taught about everyone that they interact with, and we have fun, but we also have a lot of high expectations of the kids because they're so far behind. And it's like, all right, you gained this much, now we need to get you up here, now we need to get you up here, and really build their confidence that they don't see themselves as less than, that they are capable and strong and can do anything they want to do. Yeah.
And I think this is beautiful because you take this from your experience as a refugee and being accepted in society, sometimes by society and people that are really ugly. I mean, we see what's going on in like Florida right now. I'm just like, what, are we in the 80s? What the fuck? But hopefully that whole thing goes to court and stuff. But, you dealt with stuff. There's an ugly thing that people do here that are either racist or hateful or, I don't know, pick all of the above, where they say, go back to where you came from. And I imagine you experience or deal with that at your academy, where students are told this and they've got to deal with some of the ugliness that they get from maybe, very mean, ugly Americans here.
Yeah, I mean, we see both extremes, like hate and then, curiosity, and we want to welcome you and we want to understand. And we definitely see it out on the soccer field, like when we're playing against teams. One memory really sticks out is we're playing against this team and a kid that newly arrived from Afghanistan. And this was 15 years ago when the first group of Afghan refugees came in and playing a game. And then one of the kids told him, we have to say our names during the game. And so one kid is like, oh, where are you from? He's like, Afghanistan. He's like, are you Taliban? Wow. Why don't you go back there? And the kid just walked off shaking because he left because of the Taliban. And here was, and he was so innocent when the kid asked him, where are you from? He thought, oh, this is curious. He wants to learn about me. He loves me, And it's just hard to learn that at such a young age, that this is what's going to come your way over and over and over again.
It definitely is. It saddens me that we haven't. I was born 200 years too early or something. Or I don't know if we can ever get the hate resolved in this country and racism. I mean, we've had 450 years of this thing, and it's so interweaved in our idiot psyche. And then, of course, some moron brought it back about 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, it's an ugly thing. But it's great that you have, what you're building so that there can be more integration. I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that America integrates better than any other country with people that come from other countries. We're better at melting pot. We're not perfect, of course, as some of the topics we talked about, but I've heard we do better than places like France and other places, England and stuff. They I think they isolate them a lot in those countries. Is that true, or do we still need a lot of work to do?
I think saying we're better than England and France is a low bar. It's not, right? Like, it's rough there, right? And so, and England and France weren't built on the values of America. Like, America was built on people fleeing for safety, right? Mm-hmm. And so we should be doing a lot better. I think we took several steps backwards over the last 5 to 10 years. I think there's still ways to do it so much better. I think Americans want to welcome, and we have to do it well. And first experiences are very important, right? And so to avoid the social segregation, so communities don't segregate and say, well, they don't understand me, I'm just going to stay with my own. It's like, let's learn about each other and, and build America for what it's supposed to be.
That's the best thing for everyone, is integration, everyone getting to know each other, everyone interacting with each other every day, understanding people's differences. I mean, that's really what made this country great, the great melting. I think, where would this country be? I mean, Steve Jobs was a Syrian refugee, his father. If he'd never been allowed in this country, we'd be in some pretty weird places. I don't know where we'd be. I guess we'd all own Blackberries or something. But you see the industry that came out of the iPhone. I'm a part of that. I can't think of where my job would be if he hadn't come around and built, the whole industry of social media and everything else that came out of it. And of course, Apple's been pretty integrate and pretty awesome for podcasts. But there's so many different immigrants. You've got the CEO of Google, who I believe was, if I recall right, was born and raised on a dirt floor in India in a hut. He's the CEO of Google now. This country has so much. There's no limit to who can contribute anything, and other than the stupid stuff we do in society, but there's no monopoly on who has all the smart ideas. I learned that a long time ago owning businesses, being the CEO. I don't have all the good ideas, and there's no limit to the contributions people can make. I believe one of the people who created the mRNA antivirus for that we ended up using for COVID was an immigrant as well, if I recall rightly. And so, there's no person that has good ideas. And what a lot of people don't understand in this country is we're a dwindling country population-wise. People aren't married. They're not having kids anymore. We need more immigration. We need more people in this country, because the thing that made America powerful was it was the largest marketplace in the world. And we were the dominant buyer and controller, especially when it came to our money. People don't realize that our money is actually what makes us powerful, our dollars. And it's what everyone trades on in the world, because we used to be the largest marketplace. And we're losing that ground to China. And just by the sheer billions of people that are in China, as they slowly, adapt and grow and modernize, they're going to become what we used to be. And they're not like the greatest country in the world, let's put it that way. And so we're a fading empire when it really comes down to it. And people in America need to wake up and quit being entitled. So what are some of the great moments you've had that have come out of your academy? Some of the success stories maybe you want to share?
I mean, it's like every day, there's success, right? Like on Monday, we brought in 8 Afghan students who had been on our military bases and then hotels for over 8 months. And they're so excited to learn and are eager. And one of them said, "Good morning" today, which is a step up from Monday, because those 2 words did not exist. And then, kids who are illiterate. So I got a FaceTime call from one of my seniors on Monday, and she'd gotten accepted into Kennesaw State University, her first choice. I met her 7 years ago. She's from Sudan, couldn't put a sentence together. And we ended up holding her back a year because she was not ready for high school as quickly as we thought she would be. And she talks to that moment of like, if you hadn't held me back, what would have happened? I wouldn't have been ready. I would have failed. I would have dropped out. And she's so excited. And her mom is like over the moon. She's one of 6 kids and always says like, this couldn't have happened in Sudan, right? This is happening here, right? Our school couldn't happen anywhere in the world. It's happening here.
Do you see your school growing and spreading across the nation so that it can service more refugees? We had, of course, the folks that just came over from Afghanistan that were evacuated, and then the Ukrainians. We're going to take 100 200,000 Ukrainians, I think they've agreed to, according to Biden as of this moment.
Yeah, I mean, we just launched a partnership with Bowling Green, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So we're working with their school district to implement our model for all their refugee and immigrant kids. And they're super excited. And yeah, we want to impact as many kids coming into this country. So when they get here, they have a softer landing place, mm-hmm. and they're set up for success. And then they're contributing members, mm-hmm. and strong citizens.
Do you guys seek out investors and people that can help grow the academy and make it bigger?
Always. That's part of my job. You know, when you're CEO, you're doing like everything, but fundraising is a big part of it. Awareness and bridge building is another part of it. But we want as many people as possible helping us out, because this is not just, it's a movement, right? And we want our team to be the biggest and strongest in the country.
Definitely. So are there ways that people can help out, contribute, donate? You know, we're seeing a lot of donations that people are usually always doing. Americans are usually good people for donating and helping out with charity. Is there any sort of assistance that people can give that maybe wouldn't involve money or, you know, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I mean, so there's always donating, giving money. If you're in Atlanta or Columbus, we always look for volunteers to come tutor our students and, you know, get to know our families. We're working on other ways to get other people involved that is not necessarily location specific. And I think reading the book and understanding, like, this is what it is, and humanizing people, not
mm-hmm.
vilifying. And I think that's what I try to do in the book, because I believe that Americans, when they understand the story, the hate becomes less. It's not, right? The guard comes down. It's like, oh, mm-hmm. we're more similar. We're not other. Yeah.
And you know, what's one thing I've been speaking about with the Ukrainian experience, because it's a really good example how, you know, I mean, 5 or 6 weeks ago, they were living much like us in a pseudo democracy. I'm not sure how democratic fully they were, but yeah, they were in a fairly good democracy. They were living out their lives just like most Americans are. And within overnight, the apple cart gets overturned, and it can happen anywhere. I mean, if you've studied history, things can go really bad anywhere. I mean, if it wasn't for a vice president's decision and two people at the Division of Justice and the Attorney General's office, we would probably be in a civil war and not have a democracy at this point. And we would have gone full Hungarian with the loss of a democracy. So, and also if Madison hadn't made it so the states oversaw the election, they knew that somehow he knew. So there was 3 of them that knew in the future that if they let these election be overheld by federally, that it could be more easily grasped and seized, which was the attempt, as we know.
You wonder what he was thinking, like what they were thinking back then, mm-hmm. that, you know, kind of prevented what would have happened here.
Yeah, if you read the Federalist Papers, it's really interesting how insightful they are. And we've had a lot of great historians on the show that have talked about it. They really saw 200,000 year, or 2,000 year, or 200,000. It's probably 2,000. Hopefully, I don't know, knock on wood if it lasts that long at this pace. After 220 or 2022 and the House gets overturned, we'll see how far we get with this democracy. But people don't realize how fragile they are. I mean, just, you know, we watched Hungary slide into a authoritarian rule over 2020.
Slide in.
Turkey as well.
Turkey, you know, was the 3rd largest democracy in the world in 2 years, no longer.
Yeah, over. Right? And they've got rampant inflation. I mean, you think your gas prices are bad. You know, it's crazy. And all because of one jerk. And I think Putin's a good example of, you know, how simply things can be. You know, for 2 decades, the Russians have sold their soul to him, you know, because he provided jobs and economy. And that was what the last guy who was elected 5 years ago or 6 years ago now, and I'm losing track. But, you know, people willing to sell their soul for money. And the problem is when it goes bad, it goes bad. I mean, you look at Pinochet, Duterte, Silvio Berlusconi. We go down the list of all the monsters.
All the dictators.
All the monsters and dictators where everyone sold their souls to them for jobs and money and economy. And that's what happens, you know. Mussolini, you know, people, sure, fascists are bad, but they make their trains run on time, so we'll sell their souls to them. And people don't realize how bad it can be. And it can happen anywhere and to anyone. And so when you look at refugees, when you look at people who are immigrants to this country, realize within a week, it can be you. I mean, we had one day, January 6th, and fortunately, what they wanted didn't happen. But we came really darn close a couple times, and it wouldn't have taken. All it needed was the decision of one man to throw us, 240 some odd years of this republic, and we would have been on the fence. Anyway, anything more you want to touch on about your book and what you do with Academy?
No, I mean, like what you mentioned right now, I actually have a chapter in the middle of the book that's titled Imagine, and it kind of walks you through if Ohio and Indiana went to war, what would happen. Wow. And the hard part about that chapter, like it gets your heart racing. It makes you feel what it's like to be a refugee and leaving your country, what decisions you have to make. But I was writing that. I finished it up right before January 6th.
Wow.
January 6th happened. I'm like, oh, no. This can't happen. And I, grew up in the Middle East. I've seen these, that's how it starts. I was terrified. Our families were terrified. And I'm so glad the democracy was strong and stable to survive one crazy person.
So far.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I hate to be that way, but I'm trying to warn people that, people don't realize in this country. I mean, you do, because like you say, you guys have seen it as refugees. Over here, we're spoiled little brats who go, oh, this thing will be around forever. I don't know. I'll just phone it in today. But no, I forget the line, but basically democracy, and it may come from Ben Franklin, but it's something that all of us have to appreciate and all of us have to work at every single day. There's that old saying of when Ben Franklin came out of the conference and a woman greeted him and she said, what do we have? Do we have a monarchy? Do we have a king? Do we have a democracy? And he says, you have a republic as long as you can keep it. So we are all the caretakers of this beautiful, it's not always been beautiful, I should say, of this experiment. But democracy isn't perfect, but it's the best damn thing that's out there so far. If you can find a better place that doesn't move to it. There isn't. When I've talked to people about immigration and refugees and we've had the discussion on the show or whether I talk about it on Facebook and stuff, people need to realize that this country is so vaulted for its freedom of press, the virtues that were given to us by these makers of our Constitution. They are willing to die to come to this country. What does that tell you? I mean, what does it tell you that people are willing to die to make the trip, to make the journey, to fight their way into this country, to get here, to take a part of the American pie? And around the world, we're renowned for that, even though we're pretty ugly people when it comes down to it, the asshole American, I should say. But that's the thing that we need to wake up to. And a lot of people are born and raised here. Even I went through that in my younger years. We're just spoiled. You don't see, like you said, the experience of being in other countries where there's war and there's crazy dictators and, 1 minute everything's calm and suddenly everyone's apple cart's turned upside down. We've never really had bread lines here. I think the closest we ever came to experience something like that was, the Great Depression. And then, of course, recently with coronavirus, I remember going to the store and the bread lanes were empty. So I think this is really beautiful, what you're doing, and more people need to support it, especially with what's going on. Anything more you want to touch on or tease out before we go?
No, I mean, I think nobody should take their rights for granted. This democracy is sacred. My kids are always like, they're young, they're 8, 7, and 3.5, and they see this look in my face. They're like, please don't tell us the stories like when you're back in Jordan. I'm like, no, you don't understand what you have, right? Mm-hmm. I'm constantly want them to understand how beautiful and valuable it is and don't take it for granted. It's a huge responsibility to be born in America and a huge privilege.
It really is. It really is. And people don't realize how fragile it is. I mean, read the Federalist Papers. Everyone out there in the audience, sit down and read the Constitution. I mean, I keep a copy of the Constitution on my desk. A lot of the great journalists that we have from the media, they keep it in their pocket. They have it on them at all times. That freedom of the press. That I've been in courtrooms where I've usually for speeding tickets where I've had to declare my ability to call a witness, ask for some sort of evidence, in my right to defend myself in a court of law. People don't realize how important those factors are until you get into law or study law, and they're just not afforded anywhere else. And
even our right to criticize our president and our government, right?
Yeah.
When I first got here, it was a peek of the Clinton.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the dorm living room, and everybody's like criticizing it. And I just kept looking out the window, waiting for like the FBI to come in and arrest us. Like, we're criticizing the president and we're talking all this stuff about him. And I was like, oh, nothing happened. Like, this is awesome. Like, we can call it what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Pinochet. I mean, thousands or tens of thousands of people disappeared into secret prisons and secret graves. The same thing with Assad and his regime, secret prisons. Liberia, I think, or Libya.
Liberia with Charles Taylor. I mean,
and it's all darkness, and people disappear and they're never heard from again. I believe there's probably some of that going on in Ukraine. Anyway, thank you for coming on, and thank you for the work you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really enjoyed it.
And I hope people reach out to you in our audience and offer to help or send stuff. I've been really encouraged by seeing a lot of people trying to send stuff to Ukraine, whether it's helping with B&B purchases that they'll never use, or like I've seen a lot of the fire and police departments are sending like hats and stuff over there. Yep. So I hope people reach out to you guys and send some stuff, because these folks are kids, and we want them to grow up. We want to be an integrated society, because they're going to come up with science and research and technology and all sorts of new stuff, and they're hungry for it too, where most Americans are kind of like, yeah, my belly's full. And I think that's what the beauty is of what people bring to this country, because they come here and they see the wonderment and the beauty of it, where we're just kind of jaded as Americans.
And that's why we continue to have innovations, because we have cycles, people are coming in who are hungry and keep pushing us to be better, right?
The great melting pot. America. So, Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Give me your plugs one more time so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yep. So, fugeesfamily.org, Luma_Mufleh at Twitter and Instagram, and then Fugees Family on Facebook.
There you go. Thank you, Luma.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for tuning in. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. Hit the bell notification. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. See everything we're reading and reviewing over there. Go to all our groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Join the big LinkedIn newsletter and all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.